talking about pitching and storytelling. Does that sound good? You can leave if this is the wrong session. Okay, I'm just kidding. A lot of people will be pitching today. It'll be quite fun. I don't know if you were here for the last session, so I'm going to reintroduce myself. My name is Andrea Barrica. I'm a venture partner and pitch coach at 500 Startups. Because 500 Startups is the most active seed investor in the world, some people call me one of the most active pitch coaches in the world, right? So anytime a founder goes up to demo day in the San Francisco office in the accelerator program, usually means that I've worked with them, right? 6 years ago, I was also an entrepreneur. I co-founded a company called Dinero. Dinero helped small businesses with their accounting and taxes. It was a SaaS company, right? So we did software as a service, right? Company's still around today, has over 200 employees in 5 offices. And so I'm really excited here to be here with all of you. This is a pitch session. That means that this is the only way to get better at pitching is to pitch. So at the end of today, I will be inviting some of you to come up here and pitch. Can I get a show of hands who's an entrepreneur today? Hello, yes, a lot of you. This is awesome. All right, there's a lot of us here in this room, so I'm hoping that you'll participate. Little bit, like I said, 500 Startups is one of the most active seed investors in the world. Since 2010, we've invested in over 1,500 companies in over 52 countries, right? So we've completely gone away from some of the traditional Silicon Valley thinking, and we believe that talent is everywhere, access to resources isn't. And so I've seen every type of founder and every type of geography struggle to tell their story, all right? And like I said, because I'm a pitch coach at 500, I've seen lots of companies. So I've personally worked with over 150 companies and helped invest in some of these companies as well in the accelerator. Over 4 batches, that's about 150 companies where I've been their professional pitch coach. I've helped founders raise over $60 million through pitching. And through my career as a pitch coach, I've seen thousands of pitches, okay? And because I have that, I want to tell you about like a very big problem, right? And the problem that I see with pitches all the time is what we want to say, what we actually say, and what people hear are completely different things, right? And so, as all of you know, we're all in the startup community. Most pitches, you would probably agree with me, are boring, right? I'm seeing a lot of nods, right? Most pitches are terrible, right? And their slides sometimes look like this. This is a big problem. Being boring as an entrepreneur can kill you. Because at every moment that you need something, you are pitching. Whether you are pitching a co-founder, an investor, someone you're trying to recruit to join your company, your first customers, you're pitching. So learning how to tell your story as an entrepreneur is absolutely necessary. And it's not just for fundraising. So today I have just 6 do's and don'ts, right? We're going to go over 6 do's and don'ts. And then I'd like to hear some pitches. It's pretty simple today. Okay, so like I said, being boring is the enemy. And I have 6 tips that I've learned from coaching thousands of entrepreneurs that we'll go over. And the first one is very important. The first don't is creating slides first. So when most entrepreneurs who have never pitched before, what they do is they go to Google and they Google how to pitch my startup, or they go like the template for pitch decks. Is this pretty common, right? You see this. And what happens when you go to a pitch deck template first, or when you create a deck first, it becomes very formulaic, right? It's about problem, solution, market, which we just talked about in the other sessions is important. But actually, to be memorable, that is just the skeleton of the pitch. But it's not really the story. So the first thing when you're preparing a pitch, the absolute first thing you should do is ask yourself this question. What is the single takeaway of my pitch? Now you ask, like, why only one thing? It's because most people don't really remember more than that, right? So if you pitched your company and I asked the person that you pitched, okay, what's like the one thing you remember about that pitch? We want to know that it's the same thing that you want, right? And so often this is not the case at all, right? So what's the most important thing? What's the most compelling thing about you? And doing that is part of what you should do by doing that is telling a strategic story. What do I mean by that? Storytelling is huge. people remember stories, right? But it's also a way to brag humbly. So as founders, we're always bragging at some point, like we have 10,000 users, we're growing 20% month over month. Like we're going to be the next X for Y, right? We're the next Uber for whatever. That is our life as entrepreneurs. But when you tell stories, we're able to say things about us that are both memorable but not arrogant. For example, my first company was called Indinero. And if I said to you, Indinero has the best customer service anywhere, you'd probably look at me and say, oh, that's really arrogant, and you probably don't believe me, right? Because it's like, oh, yeah, that's bullshit. Now, if I said, so my co-founder and I in Indinero, we really cared about the first product that we released. And so what we did is we personally called every single one of the businesses who used our product, and we scheduled a time to visit them in their office to watch them use it. Now, by hearing the story, it's memorable, like, oh my God, like the founders went and visited the customers in the office, but you also think like, wow, they really care about their customers. But I didn't have to say that. You knew that from my story, right? So stories can be very strategic, right? And also, stories are just memorable, right? Does anyone know here why the company Dropbox exists? Do you know who Dropbox is? Right, okay, everyone knows what Dropbox is. Well, do you know the story? Like, why does Dropbox exist? Does anyone know the story? Here? Do you know the founder of Dropbox? You know his name? His name is Drew, okay? And Drew, one day, had a really important meeting, and he had to have a presentation for this meeting or some sort of document, but he left his USB stick at home. Right? And that's how Dropbox started, right? And these are kind of the stories, right? I once had a company that was in the mapping space. And the way they told me his team story really stuck with me. He said, I met my co-founder. This is a mapping company, okay? He said, I met my co-founder in my middle school geography class, right? And we since then always dreamed about building a better software to create maps, right? It's like amazing, right? That's a team story that is very strategic. There's different types of stories, and it doesn't always have to be how you came up with it, who your team is, or the fact that you have great customer service. But stories are really the key. And the important thing is, how does the story help you achieve your goal? So the reason I would tell the customer service story is maybe I'm talking to an investor who really cares about their customers, right? If I'm talking to Tony Hsieh, CEO of Zappos, this is a Las Vegas company famous for customer service, then I'd probably tell him that story because I want him to know that we share a value, right? So there's a goal in every story. And the worst thing that I see are when people tell too many stories, they don't tell the right story, or they just don't tell any story and it's just super boring, right? Those are the three biggest things that typically happen, right? And the next thing that you should do is you should really know your secret sauce. Does anyone know what that means? Unique selling point, differentiation. What makes you better than everybody else? And I can't tell you how few people really know what this is for their company, right? Does anyone here have a startup? What's their secret sauce? What do you think is the most common secret sauce? It doesn't have to be your company. Excuse me? Good product. Unique product. What? Fills a need. Okay. Excuse me? The founders, that's more likely. So this is the thing. The product almost never differentiates, really. Isn't that interesting? The product never, and I'll give you examples of this as we go in the presentation. I have a way of thinking about this. But what's your secret sauce? Sometimes can be the product. It oftentimes is the founders. Usually, oftentimes the founder. What else? Customer experience. So something they've created in the customer. So something they've really honed in on. The market. Maybe they're segmenting the market, right? The secret sauce may be everybody else is going after these big whale enterprise customers, but no one's going after this mid-segment, and then we built a product around that, right? So it's either kind of related to the product and market segmentation. What else? Intellectual property. These are rare, though. These are rare. Actual intellectual property is rare. I know I've helped hundreds of companies, and I can probably count all of the true intellectual property differentiations on one hand. That's how rare it is. Meaning, if you have actual intellectual property, you probably have like a couple PhDs on your team, right? For example, tell you a story about this team that I worked with from Poland, okay? They have a crazy story. Their story is that they want to completely replace salespeople with AI. Crazy, right? You'd be like, that is nuts. That's impossible. But their story is a team story, and they have a tech differentiation. They have one of the 10, I think the top 20 machine learning experts in the world. Google kind of made this list. They created a top 20 list. They have one of those machine learning experts. So it's very technical differentiation, and it's very patentable. We have another company called Bigfinite that owns, I think, 7 patents in their field, right? So these are very rare companies. And patents don't mean that it's IT, right? Just because there are patents, it has to be kind of a product fit. But this is knowing your secret sauce is very important. And let me, what's most compelling about your business? People say product all the time. But what is most compelling in your business? I have a cheat sheet for us to actually learn what's compelling about businesses. And it's this, okay? Let me break it down for you. Nobody said traction or revenue, right? KPIs, right? So when you're pitching investors, this is the order of importance that it is. And let me tell you what this means, though. Number 1 is traction. Number 2 is team. Number 3 is product or tech. And number 4 is vision. And the problem is that most entrepreneurs don't know which one of these 4 is really their pitch. All pitches that you hear can be broken up into these pitches that you see here. Let's start with number 1, traction or revenue. It means it has to actually be good traction or revenue for your industry. For example, what do you think as an investor you expect from a SaaS company? A SaaS company. Does anyone know? Does anyone here run a SaaS company? Users, actually no. Users would be a different one, but for a software as a service, users depends. If it's a dev tool software, then maybe users. But typically, we're looking for revenue, right? Cost, right? This is a very defined. Whereas a marketplace, in terms of the key metric, right? We look at a key metric and we look for a growth. So what you do is investors when you look at a SaaS investor versus a marketplace investor versus a mobile investor, they have very specific metrics in their brain that they're looking for, right? Yes? Software as a service is a specific type of company. Service companies in general, right, are not interesting from a VC perspective. Software as a service absolutely is. These are the Salesforces of the world. These are your very straight software companies. Yes, so software as a service is a type of industry, but it's not a service. It's a software, right? Software as a service. So the most famous example I think of that is Salesforce, right? It's purely a software. It provides a service for your company, but it's not, and it's billed. What do I mean by SaaS? What's the most common pricing for a SaaS company? Subscriptions, recurring revenue, mainly B2B. It can be, yeah. You rarely see SaaS you sometimes see free to pay. So why do I say this? Because people think they have good traction when they don't have good traction, right? Actually exciting traction means that you're growing really quickly. The rate of growth is more exciting than the number of users. Let me give you an example. If I tell you I have a mobile app and I have 3 million users, are you impressed? If I say I have a mobile app, I've built a mobile app, and it has 3 million users, are you impressed? Most people are like, oh, I'm impressed. But what if I say I co-founded my company 5 years ago? No, it's too slow. Rate of growth is more important than number of users, okay? So if I tell you I have 3 million users, but I started 18 months ago, wow, right? That's a very quick rate of growth. And people and investors in technology like to see a rate of growth, right? So what happens is, number 1 is about traction, and truly exciting traction is month-over-month growth. It depends kind of on the industry of how fast. But that, if you have that, any investor will talk to you, right? Pretty much any investor will talk to you if you have, and it's either tractions or users. It depends what you are, right? It depends if it's revenue or number of users. The second thing, yes, I have a question? This is like my experience, I worked with a company called Rapid API, and they haven't monetized yet, but certain investors, because of, let's say, how they judge what's most important, the key metric that matters changes over time, right? So it used to be when Facebook used to care about user acquisition, and then Mark Zuckerberg totally switched and cared a lot about engagement, right? Engagement of those users. Sometimes in the beginning, as a SaaS company, you care about just the revenue growth, but then you care about, crap, we got to fix our leakage, right? Because churn is a very big thing. So for developer tools, that's just their specific kind of rating, that in the beginning, they just want to see developers using it, and then they'll monetize later. It's just kind of something that we see in that specific sector. Number 2 is team. What do I mean by a good team? When an investor says, oh my God, that's a killer team, what do they mean? I wish it meant diverse. I wish that were the case. Or like qualities. So that's a check mark. Having a hacker, hustler, hipster, that thing, designer, business person, and that's a good thing. But you will rarely raise a round based on that. Let's say, because like remember, why are we even talking about this? What is your secret sauce and the most compelling thing about your business? Maybe an expert. That's good. That's like, think a B. Like, is it the same as being a balanced team? But there's a single thing I'm talking about here. Excuse me? Credibility is true, but you won't raise a round on that. Does that make sense? Having industry experts is like a passion. Oh my God, I wish it were passion. I wish it were passion. Every entrepreneur has passion. There's one thing I'm looking for. Ambition. I wish it were vision. It's really simple, guys. What type of experience? Past exits. If you have sold a company in the past, this is something that, and you might think like, but Andrea, like these other things are really important. They are important. But what I mean, what is most compelling about you is how you design your pitch. For example, if I told you I was creating an on-demand service, like this is actually a company that was pitched to me about a year ago. On-demand dog poop pickup service. I would create an app that if your dog poops, someone will come and pick up the poop. And you're like, that is the dumbest idea. But what if the next thing out of my mouth is, oh, and this is my 3rd company. I've sold my last 2 companies for $200 million each. You'd be like, I don't care. I'm in. Right? So this is what happens, right? So oftentimes the people who've raised money, they've just done it before. Right? So when I say team, actually a good team, like actually like I will raise money on that, it's because they have some sort of past experience and not like this is my 6th startup, they're all dead. You have returned money to an investor in the past, your rate of fundraising and your pitch, like what happens is sometimes people won't bring this detail in. They'll pitch a company, they'll pitch the dog food delivery service, but they won't add in that very important next sentence, which is, this is my 3rd company, I've returned investment in my last 2 companies in the 10x of multiple, right? Like that is what is really important. So when I say team, first priority is if you have a past exit, if you have worked, or maybe you're not even a founder. Let's say you were employee number 10 at Netflix. That means something, right? That means that you saw a company from 10 people to 1,000 people. That's really exciting to an investor. Not only that, you will have the industry connections and fundraising connections to these growing brands. So the second most important thing about team, second exits, is did you work at a big brand that was venture funded? This means a lot, right? This means a lot. Third thing is balanced team, domain experience. These are all good things, but you wouldn't, if I told you I was doing the dog poop delivery service and I had like people, 20 years PhD in like dog training and like, it'd be cool. It'd be like, okay, that makes sense. Like that makes sense. But it makes sense why they're doing it, but you wouldn't say I'm in like right away, right? There's a lot of people where doesn't matter on the idea. If the founder is amazing and has done it before, they will raise money. That's a ridiculous example, but my point is it totally changes the pitch mentality when you can pitch team in a very, very strong way, okay? Third is product. And when I mean technology, I also mean what was talked about there. It's people who probably have patents, have worked on a technology that's really defensible. If you're a mobile app, it's not likely that the most exciting thing about you is your product, right? I'm sorry. It's just not. Like the user experience, it's all nice, but like that's gonna be rare that investors like, yes, that's it, I'm in. It's probably gonna be number 4, which is vision. And the vision pitches are great. Lots of people raise money on vision. You need to know you're a vision pitch if you're going into a pitch. You don't want to think you're number 1, 2, or 3 if you're not actually those pitches. And this is a very even more important thing. If you have traction, really good traction, or really amazing team, or technology, don't pitch vision, because then an investor is going to assume you don't have 1, 2, or 3. Right? So this is really the way, like, when I coach entrepreneurs on their pitches, I think of like, okay, what are these 4 things, and what's the best thing about you? Let's make that the star of your pitch. Okay? Go on. Would you include an exit strategy in a pitch? What do you think investors are thinking when you include an exit strategy in a pitch? Let's yell things out. It's a good question, but you're like, oh, this guy kind of wants to just get out. He's not really in it for the long term. Right. So not quite. So when someone says, I've sold 2 companies before, I think the assumption is that, okay, they know how to execute on companies, and that's a pretty good exit, right? Over the hundreds of millions, even like tens of millions in certain markets is very exciting. But few entrepreneurs actually talk about exit strategy ever. Business plan. We don't really look at business plans. Startups are not about business plans. They tend to be about execution. Like, sure, you should be able to answer the question. Like, if an investor says, all right, like, what's your exit strategy? They want to see how you're thinking about it. Right? They want to see, like, you lay out the options. Like, okay, how would you ask if an investor asks you, what's your exit strategy? How would you answer it? I think that's good. Okay, I don't have one. I'm in it for the long haul. That's one way to go about it. I like a more balanced approach. Like, hey, to be honest with you, investor, I'm in this for the long haul. This is my passion. However, if you look at the market, there's these acquirers that have been acquiring companies like mine. So, you could see going down that route if we really came to it. But I'm laser focused right now on expanding in this market and like going forward. So you want to say that you've thought about it? I think people sometimes just want to know, like sometimes investors are just curious. They're like, oh, like, and you can educate them, right? So that's one way of handling that question. Does everyone understand this hierarchy of needs, right? And if you have questions, like if you see entrepreneurs around the world who have raised money, know that there's probably something that you, like for example, a company that I met, it was in a really crowded space, and I learned that they got investment. And I was very confused. I was like, what? I don't understand. Like, they don't have any customers. And I learned that the founder had a very big exit in the past, right? And this is the secret. If you have really good traction, if you have amazing team with previous exits or some sort of detail like that, or you've got amazing technology, you don't have to be that good at pitching. But if you have vision and you're pitching a vision, you have to be really, really good at telling your story, right? That is the people that you really need to nail it every time, because we don't have number 1, 2, and 3. And that brings me to my next step. Everything about investor pitches are about increasing greed and reducing risk. Okay? So a great team, a traction, and technology, these de-risk your investments. These de-risk investing in you, right? Talking about market size increases greed. Does that make sense? When you think about your pitches, and what happens is when people talk about vision, they talk about what they're excited about. That is not what pitching is about. This is the thing that most people don't understand. Pitching is not about you. It's about the other person. It's about increasing greed and reducing risk. So what often happens is people are like, we can't wait to like solve this problem for the customer, and they get really into the product, and like they kind of just make it a sales pitch, right? But that's not what you're doing. In an investor presentation, you are selling the opportunity, not the product. And especially here, actually, I find that when I'm talking to founders in this region specifically, and a lot of emerging markets, this is a very big problem. People will come and pitch me, but they'll pitch me like, I've built this product and it solves all of your problems. And like, it'll show me the product. I'm like, the product's cool. I like it. And I'll just like kind of walk away slowly, right? Because that's not what my job is, right? I'm typically not the customer for your product. So get out of the sales pitch mentality and get into investor pitch mentality. They're completely different. How do you prepare to do this, right? So one of the questions that I always ask entrepreneurs is this: what are the top 3 objections in the investor's mind while you are pitching them? Excuse me? Objections. What are they thinking about you? Like, what are the sensors in their brain that are like calling bullshit, 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 right? Go on. I've seen this before. What else? Yell out objections. Everyone yell out objections, like things that investors say. Markets is too small. It's not scalable. Something about it is not scalable. What else? Excuse me? Why you? So you maybe not have the credibility, okay? Overestimating your capabilities or product, okay? So, excuse me? Too risky. Exactly, right? So all of these things are going through your investor's brain. And so when you design your pitch, this should be very key. So how do you solve this? If someone says, let's start with the market size. Okay. When people say that your market size is too small, then maybe you tell a story overturning that. For example, I invested in a company not really in a exciting space of technology. They are in this space of digital sewing patterns. All right? So what do you think when I say we are creating a platform for digital sewing patterns? You be my investors. What are the objections? How many people actually sew? This is a dying market, right? Like what else? Exactly. So that's do people really use it? Do we really need it? Okay. What else? We'll construct a pitch together based on these objections, all right? We're the market leaders, okay? So market leaders. So sounds like the big thing is the market size, right? Is this really market growing? So if I were pitching Upcraft Club, this company called Upcraft Club. Also, the founder is like a woman from Iowa. This is a state in the middle of the United States, right? So it's not a very startup city. She has 4 children. And she's like she's been an entrepreneur in the past, but she's not really like a normal tech entrepreneur. So she has the YU, someone who ever said credibility in the back. So when we created her demo day pitch, we told this story. I think I can do it from heart. She came out on stage and she was like, everything you wear today started out as a sewing pattern. There are 30 million home sewists in the United States, and this market is growing year over year. So that's how she started. So right away, the objection that she got most came out front. And everyone was surprised in the audience. They're like, oh, yeah. Sewing patterns are a huge market that I just don't know about. And B, it's growing year over year, right? So that's how you do it. And then the YU. So she had all these things, right? So this is just one example of knowing an objection and designing a pitch to kind of overturn and educate, right? Right away. You need to use one more example. Tell me a company, or tell me something in the MENA region right now, a startup type that everyone is doing right now. What's like the most common? Food delivery. That's so funny. That's the same thing in San Francisco. Like whenever anything's in food delivery. So when I say, hey guys, I'm starting a MENA food delivery startup for the MENA region. What's the first thing that comes to your head? So many. It's so crowded. It's so crowded. So what's the first thing you should do in your pitch? Differentiation. If you have a startup in the food delivery space, it doesn't matter if you're in Dubai or in San Francisco. Apparently, it's the same kind of thing. If you have a company in this space, the first words out of your mouth should be, "Hi, we're a food delivery startup, and what makes us different is," right? You want to if you're in a crowded space, you have to hit differentiation like right away. Because most people, let's say you wait for differentiation till 2 minutes into your pitch, everyone has stopped listening because they're like, been done, crowded, not interested, right? So ordering what you say when really matters, okay? So thanks for going through those objections. This is the most important thing, really, is understanding what people are thinking while you're pitching. Last thing is passing the 60-second test. 99% of all pitches that I've worked on had to be shortened. I had never had someone be able to just instantly tell their ideas concisely. Why do you think that is? Too complicated. This is the thing that people think. They think their businesses are complicated. Trying to pack too much information is absolutely right. And it's common, right? Even the more complex or technical the product, people think that they need to talk. But let me tell you a secret. It is harder to do a 60-second pitch than a 5-minute, than a 10-minute, than a 20-minute. Because when you do 60 seconds, you have to know what is exciting, important, and vital about your company. It's amazing how few people know. And why is 60 seconds important? Because no one is as interested in you as you think they are. This is seriously the hardest thing I had to learn as a pitch coach. And 60 seconds is about the time it takes at a barbecue, meeting some investor here at the conference. 60 seconds is all you have. It's probably less. I have about a 30-second limit in my brain. And if I'm not interested in 30 seconds, then I'm just not interested, right? And one of the tips on the 60-second pitch, if you can't explain your startup to your grandmother, you don't really understand what you're doing. It has to be that simple, right? So 60 seconds is actually the first version of a pitch that I like to master. Because if you master 60, you can master 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The shorter the better, too. If someone gives you a 4-minute pitch slot at a startup competition, do it in 2.5. Everyone will love you. You've been to startup pitch competitions. Isn't it so hard? It's so boring, right? After a while, it just gets like the same thing. So being brief, being brilliant, and then being gone. That's what's really amazing, right? About a pitch. And then the last thing that is the last tip before we go into live pitch coaching is the 20-to-1 rule. Does anyone know what the 20-to-1 rule is? Anyone heard of this? So this is a tip that I learned from a book about TED coaching. Does anyone know what TED is? Right? And this is a rule, and I'll kind of tell you more about it, but the rule is very simple. You got to practice 20 minutes out loud for every 1 minute of your presentation. And this is just for presentations like this, you all here looking at me. If you're going on a TED stage, it's more like 1,000 minutes to 1, right? So the bigger the stage, the more the ratio. But it's very important because arguably the most important part of a presentation, especially a live one, is the presentation, the actual, your body, your voice, your presence on stage. But it is the least prepared consistently. So if you prepare, you're already going to be ahead of the game in everything that you do. And even if it's as little as I'm going to do a presentation for 4 partners at a VC firm, having that little extra practice can really help. So nail that physical body storytelling as well. My coach, and I have a mentor. I believe everyone should have a coach in public speaking, so I do too. She is a professional clown and mime. So she really helps me master the body language aspect of pitch coaching. So I'd love to share some of that with any of you here who would like to jump on stage. And that is it for me, everyone. So thank you. So we do have entrepreneurs here. Would anyone like to try a 60-second pitch in front of this lovely, friendly group? You'll go? Come on. Let's give her a hand, everybody. You have to be really okay. Thank you. I'm going to run. Can someone have time in the front? Do you have a timer? Yeah, 60 seconds, please. That would be great. You have Hello? You test on it?
Hello?
Oh, great. Everyone, quick, first tip. Ice cream cone, okay? So hold the mic to your lips.
Okay. Ready? Well, hello, everyone. We've seen prices go up and down in different industries. Investors are being careful. One industry that was never affected was the healthcare industry. Why is that? It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Our company, Afia Arabia, is a healthcare ecosystem. Now you're going to say that, yes, we have Doctoruna, I am already there, I can schedule my appointments, but you cannot pay for the appointment, you cannot get the insurance approval, you cannot have an e-pharmacy, you cannot have an e-laboratory, and that is why Alfie Arabia now exists. In one application, in a click of a button, you can find your doctor, get an appointment, get your assurance approved, and have all the information touch of the hand. If you have a blood test that you need to be fasting, certain time of day, it's all going to be there for you. You don't have to have a medical degree. You don't have to have a doctor's advice. It's all there.
Time. Let's give her a hand, everyone. Okay, hold on. Stay with me. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you for going first. This is awesome. So we're going to do a quick exercise. Who here wants to try telling me what they do? No. Sorry, later. I would love to have your question, but okay, let's do this. Raise your hand if you think you understand what they do. I won't call on you. Just raise your hand if you think you do. All right. Raise your hand if you don't. There's not a lot of hands. There's like about half, right? So there's like half that just kind of don't know. So in terms of clarity, that's one thing. We have a couple health investors too that I will ask what they think. The second question, so we have about half people who understand. This is the second question. What is the most interesting thing about this pitch? Let's help her. Differentiation. Did anyone get that part? All right. But one thing that is kind of amazing, and I'm really glad you went first, because you are a really calm speaker. I liked how calm, right? It was easy to watch her, right? She didn't seem like, ah. But the one thing that I want to let everyone see, wasn't that a sales pitch? It was a sales pitch, right? So we were all like, yeah, I'd kind of try out the product, but and again, this is about investor pitches, so that would have worked great if this were all like your potential customers and you'd want to. But as investors, Ed, do you have anything to say? He's one of our health advisors. Right. All of this can be done in 60 seconds, and I'm going to show you how. We're going to do it together, okay? All right, so things like I said. So have you launched?
Yes.
Do you have users?
Yes.
6 months. How many users do you have?
6,000.
6,000. That's cool. Don't we want to know that? That's cool, right? That's 6,000 users. That is better than 0. Because when you pitch like that, I'm like, nice idea. Probably doesn't have anything. Because if she did, she'd bring it up. Yeah. Right? Okay. And a way you can do it, too, people think you need to have, like, sections, like a pitch deck. But you could say, what's your name? Reem? Because she introduced herself. Hi, I'm Reem, the CEO and co-founder of...
No, but I'm not the CEO. I'm
okay.
business developer.
You are today. You are today, my friend. I'm just kidding. So I'm one of the teammates at Alpha Arabia. Yeah. A health platform with over 6,000 users growing X% month over month. Move on. It can be that easy, right? Where you just like drop it in somewhere. Yeah. So that's one thing you can do. Growth rate, is it growing?
Yes. I don't have the figures.
You don't have the figures. Okay.
On top of my head.
All right. Well, so you're growing. Have some sort of growth rate, right? It's important to know the rate because we said, okay, this means it's moving. And then one thing he said, why you, right? So one thing I didn't hear at all in the 60 seconds is, who are you? Who is this team? So can you just brag a little bit, and we'll figure out what's the most exciting.
Our CEO was in the IT industry for the past 25 years. And we have an entire panel of doctors as our medical advisors who are also participants of Alfie Arabia.
Okay, that's amazing, right? You want to know there are actual doctors on the team if it's a health tech startup.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I want you to do. I want you to take all that bit of like 45 seconds that you talked about product. Let's condense that into a sentence. It is possible. Go ahead. You go ahead. Let's do it together.
One sentence?
Yes. So let's just elevator pitch. Alpha Arabia is
a one-stop shop for your healthcare system.
In the MENA region, right?
In the MENA region. Yeah.
So you help consumers. So this is another thing that is very important, right? I think the people who didn't understand, what didn't you understand? Help me help her. Right, so this is a good question. Who's the customer? Is it B2B or B2C? Who are your customers? Are your customers hospitals helping patients, or is it direct to patients? That's probably one of the most important things. Like, I didn't really get that. What is it?
We have 3 main customers. 1 is our patients. 2 are doctors, clinics, or hospitals, whichever form they come in. And 3 are the insurance companies.
It's a lot. Who's your biggest customer?
The doctors.
The doctors. So this is another tip. When you're 60-second pitch, you don't have to give me everybody. Just say 6,000 people, most of whom are doctors. Move on. You can always go into more detail one-on-one.
Yeah.
right? Because if you tell me we have 3 customers, doctors, patients, and insurance companies, in my head, what am I thinking? Investor brain.
So many.
They're not focusing. That seems like they can't focus on what they're doing. That seems like unfocused. So you don't want to bring anything up that's going to hurt you, not help you, okay? So we can work one-on-one to kind of strain that together. But your 60-second pitch should like come out strong, like, hi, this is who I am. I'm the CEO of this company. We've got this traction. This is what we're building. It's different than everybody else who's doing this because A, B, and C reason. Yeah. And we're the best team to do it because we have these people and these people. If you think about like skeleton, and that's 40 seconds, okay? That makes sense? Thank you so much for coming up. I really appreciate it, Reem. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? You can pitch us a fund. Any investors want to pitch? What? Oh, here, come on. Oh, did you have I'm sorry, sir. You said you had a question? A comment? Right. Right. Slow down the name of your company. That's also a very common advice. Just be really slow in the beginning because this is the first time we're listening to the company. I think that's good advice. All right, sir. Are you pitching as a startup today?
I did yesterday. I am, yes.
You're pitching as a
right
company.
now.
Okay. Do you mind timing again for me, please? Do you mind timing? Thank you.
Yes, is it on? Yeah. Okay. So my name is Khalil, and I'm the founder and CEO of Salam Swipe. Salam Swipe is an interactive matching application designed for Muslims. Some people call us the Tinder for Muslims, but we're much more than that. We capture the nuances of the Muslim community and put it into an app. Over the past year, we have over 10,000 members, and we're growing 10% month over month in users. There are 1.6 billion Muslims in this world, and about 30% of them are under the age of 30, which shows a huge market of potential users around the world. And we have yet to even launch our Android version. So that's just on iOS. So that's our...
Cool. Thank